Steve Culverwell, a descendant of one of the original ranchers here, meets us at the old train depot.
We would love to have you tell us a little bit about your hometown, if you don't mind.
Oh, I'd love to tell you about my hometown.
Now, I understand that Caliente had a different name when it was first originated that is very closely tied to you.
Right. My grandfather tells me it was called Culverwell. There's a historical marker just across the street up that way, and it says Caliente, and then it's underneath it says Culverwell's Ranch. And my great-grandfather and his brother came here in about the 1880s or around there sometime. Actually, my grandfather was born here in 1882, so it was called Culverwell until around 1900, early 1900s, 1901, 1902, when the railroad came through. And I think when the railroad did come through, they had what was called the Harriman-Clark War. Senator Clark and E.H. Harriman were building tracks side by side, and when they got here, my great-grandfather stopped them, had a shotgun, was up on the wagon saying, "You guys ain't going any farther until I get my money, until I'm paid," because it was his ranch and he didn't want to come in through his property. So he kind of stopped them, and they had a big battle here that ensued. You can read about it in Nevada history sometime. Sure. But anyway, the crux of the story was, I think, that the railroad was mad, and so later on, when it became an actual railroad stop here, and they had the roundhouse, and you see the depot they built here, they changed the name to Caliente from Culverwell. But yeah, we still have, I guess, I know, we still have quite a bit of heritage here, though. So
I've read the Caliente called the Rose City.
Right.
What's the history of that?
Well, I think what happened was that Tom Dixon, who was the mayor at that time, he was married to Alice Culverwell Dixon, who was the daughter of my great-grandfather's brother. And so he started a park. They donated the property for a park, and they started planting rose bushes in memorial of people who had died.
Though the Culverwells were among the earliest to come to this area, they weren't the first. 2 escaped slaves from Arkansas came west and settled here in the 1860s.
This here is the train service store, I guess is the name of it. As a kid, I know it as called a chuck wagon.
Why the chuck wagon?
Well, in the chuck wagons in the history was where all the cowpokes came and ate at the chuck wagon. Well, this was a kind of an eatery, really. That's basically what they did. During the early war, they had troop trains that come through. I think it was World War II, and my grandfather bought this building from Mr. Underhill, who was the undertaker, and brought it off Spring Heights and set it up here, and they serviced all the troop trains, and then for another 4 or 5 years after that. But it was short-lived, you know, as they fed a lot of people in there, though, and it was kind of an interesting old building. But
so it was kind of a general store and vending machine all in one.
Yeah, it kind of took care of everybody. So it was a neat old building, but I don't think it's been used for quite a while.
The Union Pacific Railroad Station is the most well-known of Caliente's buildings. No longer a train station, it now houses the town's Chamber of Commerce and City Hall. The business district on the east side of the tracks has been the victim of 2 major fires, but parts of the buildings are still original, dating back as far as 1905.
Yeah, here's the old Underhill house. It's, I think I mentioned him before. He was the undertaker.
Undertaker, yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty nice old stone building, one of the probably one of the oldest buildings in town.
Is that local stone?
I think, yeah, local native stone that they hauled in. This track right here, as you see back here, as we told you before, when all this area was a ranch at one time, the whole thing.
Your great-grandfather's?
Great-grandfather's, yeah. And when they built the railroad through, they kind of split the town in half. And my great-grandfather and his brother were the original settlers here, and so when they actually tracks came through, they decided to, well, we'll just split partnerships, and they divided the town in half. And my grandfather took this half, and my great-grandfather's brother took the other half, and so that's kind of how.
So it did matter what side of the tracks you were born on then?
Yeah, I was always from the wrong side of the tracks because my grandfather he more farmed, and we didn't sell as much property, and the other great-grandfather's brother, they sold all theirs off, and the town kind of developed on that side, and so I always came from the wrong side of the tracks as I was growing up.
Floods have tormented the people of Caliente over the years. In 1907, one flood came through and ruined the train tracks. The story there is that a man was brought in specifically to build up the railroad so that a subsequent flood would not do the same damage. Well, guess what happened 2 years later? You got it. The rebuilt railroad fell victim to another flood. Steve, after your family's been here for now over 120 years, seems pretty clear to me that it's a pretty strong love affair between you guys and Caliente.
Yeah, I love it here. I can't think of any other place to live. I've been to Japan, I've been to Mexico, I lived in Canada for a while. I always wanted to come home and live. It's just something about the people, the lifestyle. It's just a good place to live, and a good place to raise children. I couldn't think of a better place to raise my children than right here in Caliente, where they can run and play and be free and do whatever they want. It's a wonderful thing. Wonderful.